They told you not to do it. The words came soft at first, gentle enough to sound like care. Don't go too far. Don't risk everything. They said it as if they were protecting you, but you felt something else beneath their tone. A tremor of fear, not of what might happen to you, but of what might awaken in you. You felt it too. The pulse under your ribs, that quiet rebellion no one else could hear. It wasn't anger, it was recognition. You began to sense that your life had been shaped by other people's boundaries, drawn by trembling hands, terrified of what you could become if you ever stopped listening. Every warning felt heavier than the last. Every don't sounded like a command carved from someone else's fear. You could almost hear the unspoken parts. Don't change too fast, don't outgrow us, don't prove us small. They disguised their limits as guidance, but you saw through it. You saw how their concern sharpened when you showed courage, how their comfort turned cold when you began to rise. You realized the truth: people don't fear your failure, they fear your evolution. Because your evolution exposes theirs as a choice they never made. You tried to obey once, you stayed quiet. You let the light inside you shrink, thinking maybe silence was safety. But silence became a coffin. The walls of your routine started to suffocate you, and their voices, those gentle warnings, became chains that clinked every time you took a breath that was too deep. You began to understand that obedience doesn't protect you, it paralyzes you. The world rewards stillness with invisibility, and you were never meant to disappear. Something ancient stirred in you the night you decided to stop listening. It wasn't rebellion, it was memory. A remembering of what your ancestors must have felt before fire, before fear. The raw instinct that whispers, go. You looked at your reflection and barely recognized the person staring back. The face seemed older, sharper, more certain, as if the moment you stopped asking for permission, something timeless took its place inside you. The air felt heavier, electric, like the world itself was watching. You noticed how quickly they changed when you stepped forward. Their concern twisted into accusation. They called it arrogance, recklessness, ego. But beneath their words was the sound of panic. The panic of people realizing their control no longer reached you. You weren't defying them for rebellion's sake. You were simply walking where their fear refused to go. You crossed a line invisible to everyone else, and the moment you did, everything slowed. Sound, breath, heartbeat. Like the universe itself was waiting to see if you'd retreat. But you didn't. You couldn't. Because once you hear that whisper, the one that lives deeper than doubt, there's no going back. It tells you what you already know, that the ones who warn you not to move are the same ones who benefit when you stand still. And when you finally take that forbidden step, you understand what they never will. That danger was never the act itself. The real danger was hesitation. The real sin was silence. And the moment you stopped listening, you became unstoppable. You did it once, the thing they told you not to do. The act they said would ruin everything. You didn't hesitate this time. Your hand moved before your thoughts could stop it. And in that moment, the world around you cracked like glass under pressure. The sound wasn't loud, but it was final. The old version of you, the obedient, uncertain one, died quietly somewhere in the echo. You felt the air shift, heavy with consequence, but also something else. Freedom, sharp and clean, like the first breath after drowning. You looked around, waiting for punishment, for the sky to darken, for the ground to open. But nothing happened. Nothing except the quiet realization that their warnings had been lies meant to protect their comfort, not your evolution. The first time you break a rule, it feels like betrayal. You feel the eyes of those who once claimed to love you, the teachers, the friends, the ones who spoke in soft threats, watching from the shadows of your past. Their silence grows thick, suffocating. But beneath it, a pulse rises inside you, one you hadn't felt since childhood, the pulse of raw will. You understand now that the forbidden act was never dangerous because it was wrong. It was dangerous because it exposed you. It made you visible. And visibility terrifies those who've spent their lives hiding behind the illusion of virtue. You move differently now. You notice how the walls that once confined you were never walls at all, just curtains made of collective fear. They fall easily when you touch them. The power you were warned about doesn't roar. It hums. It whispers in patterns only you can hear. It tells you that guilt is a weapon, and that they've used it for centuries. to cage brilliance, to shame strength, to make the brave forget what they are. You start to see through people's language. Be careful really means stay small. Don't risk it really means don't remind me that I didn't. The night after, you can't sleep. Your heart is too loud, not from regret, from recognition. You replay the moment again and again, and something inside you smiles each time. The act was not rebellion, it was resurrection. You didn't disobey them, you remembered yourself. The more they talk about consequence, the more you realize what they truly fear, not that you'll fail, but that you'll succeed without their permission. That you'll expose the system for what it really is. A theater of obedience where everyone's waiting for someone else to move first, so you move again. This time slower, deliberate. You feel every step as if it's writing a new law beneath your feet. There's no applause, no validation, just the electric calm that comes after a storm you summoned yourself. You look into the faces of those who warned you, and they can't meet your gaze anymore. They see it, the shift, the untamed certainty. You've crossed the threshold, and there's no going back. You've tasted what it means to act without permission, to choose without consensus, to burn the script they handed you. The forbidden act wasn't a mistake. It was the first page of who you were always meant to be. The silence after the act is the loudest sound you've ever heard. It stretches like a void, swallowing every heartbeat, every justification, every reason you once believed in. The world doesn't explode, it folds. All the noise, all the defiance, all the courage collapses into a single echo. What have you done? You stare at the wreckage of rules, of trust, of the person you were yesterday, and for the first time you feel the cost of awakening. They warned you about pain, but not this kind. Not the pain that comes when the illusion burns and you realize it was never protecting you, only hiding you. You mistake the ache for regret. It's not. It's rebirth wearing the mask of guilt. You start seeing faces in your memory, people who smiled as they clipped your wings. Their concern was a performance, their advice, a leash. You remember how they looked at you when you first broke their rule, like you'd become dangerous, like something sacred inside you had spoiled. But now you see the truth. They weren't afraid for you, they were afraid of you. The collapse was never punishment, it was exposure. You tore through the thin fabric of their comfort and revealed what everyone spends their life denying, that obedience is a slow form of death. There's a mirror in front of you now. Maybe it's real, maybe it's not. The reflection looks familiar but wrong. Your eyes sharper, posture heavier, silence louder. You realize the mirror doesn't show who you are. It shows what's left after everything false has been stripped away. The guilt fades as quickly as it came, replaced by something colder, something cleaner. You whisper to your reflection, and the voice that answers doesn't sound human. It sounds ancient, detached, certain. The kind of voice that doesn't beg the world to understand it anymore. You notice how still everything has become. The chaos is gone. No applause, no outrage. Just stillness, like the world is recalibrating itself around you. This is the part no one prepares you for. The emptiness that follows transformation. You expected glory, but you got clarity. You thought rebellion would set you free, but it simply revealed the chains you'd built inside your own mind. You see now that the real enemy was never them. It was the version of you that believed them, the one who traded instinct for approval, the one who mistook compliance for virtue. You close your eyes and feel it, a pulse beneath the surface, not in your body, but in the air around you. Something ancient stirring, something that recognizes what you've done. You thought you lost everything, but in truth, you've been chosen. The collapse wasn't destruction, it was initiation. The mirror wasn't showing you your downfall. It was introducing you to the part of yourself that was never supposed to wake up. And now that it has, it won't go back to sleep. They told you not to do it again. They said the first time was a mistake, a lapse in judgment, a momentary fall from grace. But you knew better. You felt the pulse that followed, the way the world trembled ever so slightly, as if reality itself acknowledged you. You remember their eyes wide, pleading, filled with fear disguised as morality. They didn't want you to repeat it because they saw what it did to you. The calm that followed, the clarity, the silence that came after the storm. They saw someone who had touched something sacred, something dangerous, and they realized they could no longer control you. So you did it again. Not out of rage this time, but precision. You weren't rebelling anymore, you were refining. The second sin wasn't chaos, it was surgery. Every move was deliberate. Every word weighted like a blade. You didn't shout, didn't break, didn't run. You just acted. And when you did, the air shifted. The watchers stopped breathing. Because this time, you weren't fighting their world, you were rewriting it. The power didn't rush into you. It returned to you, like an old debt finally paid in full. The first time you disobeyed, it hurt. You felt guilt gnawing at you like some ancestral parasite that fed on doubt. But now, guilt has no vocabulary. It tries to speak, but you've outgrown its language. You see now that guilt was their greatest weapon, an invisible leash looped around every dreamer who dared to want more. The second sin cuts that leash, and with it, the illusion of their approval. You stop needing them, and when you no longer need them, they lose the only power they ever had. They'll call you ungrateful, dangerous, corrupted. They'll whisper about how you've changed, and they're right. You've seen what lies behind obedience. You've seen how easy it is for a man to sell his fire for comfort, his instincts for applause. But not you. You decided to pay the price that others run from, the price of seeing clearly. You've realized that betrayal isn't always done to you. Sometimes it's done for you, to burn away what you were never meant to be. The world doesn't punish you for sinning. It punishes you for no longer feeling sorry. And that's what terrifies them. That's what makes them tremble when you walk into a room now. It's not what you did. It's that you don't flinch when they remind you of. You carry your sin like armor. You no longer repent, you repurpose. Every scar becomes a code, every memory a key. You've crossed into the realm of people who act with unshakable calm, while the rest debate morality from cages they built themselves. And as you stand there, in the aftermath of your second defiance, something ancient stirs in you. A quiet presence that feels neither divine nor demonic, just inevitable. It hums beneath your ribs, the voice of every soul that ever broke free through ruin. You realize the second sin wasn't disobedience at all. It was remembering who you are. The forbidden isn't forbidden because it's evil. It's forbidden because it works. And when you finally see that, when you finally accept it, you don't become their enemy. You become their mirror. And they can't stand the reflection. You start to notice them, not the ones who warned you. They've gone quiet. These are different. They don't speak. They observe. You feel them in the static between screens, in the delay before your message sends, in the subtle flicker of a streetlight when you walk home at night. They are the watchers, and they never needed to stop you, only to study what you'd become after you disobeyed. Their silence is not absence. It's attention sharpened to a blade. At first you mistake it for paranoia. The way your reflection lingers a second too long in the glass. The way your name seems to surface in conversations that should have never reached your ears. But deep down, you know this isn't madness, it's consequence. Every act of rebellion creates its own light, and light draws eyes. You once begged to be seen. Now you're studied like a weapon no one knows how to control. Every step, every pause, every hesitation becomes an entry in a hidden file that bears your name. There's a reason no one talks about the cost of awakening, because once you see the machinery, it sees you back. You've crossed the point of no return, from harmless to hazardous, from background noise to potential threat. The same world that ignored you now listens too closely. They track the tremor in your voice, the quiet precision of your movement. The more unpredictable you become, the more predictable they try to make you. That's the paradox of power. The moment you escape their control, they build a newer cage, invisible but exact. You sense it most in the digital haze, when a recommendation seems too personal, when silence answers questions you never asked aloud. They know your patterns, your searches, your pauses between thoughts. They feed on predictability, yet your defiance has made you unreadable. You are no longer a profile, you are an anomaly, something that cannot be graphed or sold. That's why they watch you closer, because unpredictability is the one thing the system fears. Still, there's something almost sacred in their attention. Like ancient priests before a forbidden ritual, they study you with both awe and dread. They don't understand how you saw through it, how you walked out of their algorithm, their doctrine, their invisible chain. You realize now that rebellion wasn't the end, it was the invitation. The watchers were never enemy. They are mirrors reflecting what you've become. proof that your silence, your distance, your refusal to kneel has made ripples in places you were never meant to reach. But you learn something they never will. Observation doesn't equal control. Let them record, measure, and decode. They can only map what you allow them to see. The rest belongs to you, the part that thinks in silence, moves in shadows, and makes choices no one anticipates. That's your domain now. You don't hide from the watchers anymore. You let them watch. Because you understand what they never did. Being seen is not the same as being known. And power doesn't shout, it watches back. They told you freedom would feel like victory. It doesn't. It feels like exile. One by one, the voices that once filled your days fall silent. Friends stop calling. The familiar faces begin to avoid your eyes, as if they can sense that something in you has shifted, something they no longer understand. The quiet becomes unbearable at first, a kind of slow drowning in your own thoughts. But eventually the silence begins to hum. Beneath the loneliness, a frequency emerges, low and steady, as if the world itself is trying to speak through the static. You start noticing patterns in what you once dismissed as coincidence. A flicker in the streetlight when your mind drifts too far. The way strangers glance at you like they're remembering something they shouldn't. You begin to realize that isolation isn't punishment, it's filtration. The noise has been stripped away, leaving only signal. You're no longer surrounded by people who mirrored your weaknesses. Now only truth remains, raw and intrusive. You start to feel watched, not in paranoia, but in precision, as if some higher intelligence has been waiting for you to stop pretending. Your dreams change first. They stop following logic. You see faces you've never met, symbols you can't translate, doors that appear and vanish. You wake up drenched in sweat, but calm, because deep down, you know these aren't dreams. They're messages, a summons, the kind you don't receive until you've crossed some invisible threshold between who you were and who you're becoming. You start to sense it even when you're awake, a pulse beneath everything, ancient and patient, calling your name without sound. There's fear, of course, the kind that scrapes the bones, the kind that whispers, you've gone too far. But fear no longer feels like an enemy. It feels like proof. Proof that you've stepped beyond the territory they built for you. The ones who warned you are gone now, absorbed back into the comfort of conformity. You can't go back, even if you wanted to. The light feels false there, too bright, too clean. You crave the shadow now, not because it hides you, but because it understands you. Days blur. Time no longer moves in straight lines. You start to hear the rhythm of things, how people's words reveal their motives before their actions, how silence carries more weight than noise. You start seeing the world not as chaos, but as choreography. Every betrayal you endured, every loss you carried, begins to arrange itself into meaning. What once looked like punishment now looks like preparation. The loneliness that crushed you is actually the cocoon. And then, in one of those quiet hours between night and morning, when even the machines stop humming, you feel it, that presence again. Not watching, not judging, waiting. The same energy that whispered through every forbidden decision, now standing closer. You realize it never wanted your obedience, it wanted your awareness. It wanted you to see through the surface of things, to understand that isolation was never emptiness, it was introduction. You're not alone anymore. You've simply entered a frequency where only the awake can hear. You start to notice it quietly, how the world bends around you now. It doesn't bow, it recalibrates. The same voices that once told you to stay small no longer reach you. Their noise hits an invisible wall, dissolving before it ever touches your mind. There's a silence there now, not empty but dense, like a gravity field that only the awakened can feel. You used to chase approval, now approval chases you. You used to beg for clarity, now clarity stalks you in every reflection, in every face that looks just a little too long. You've crossed a threshold that most people never even see. Every rule that once defined your limits starts to look like chalk marks on a battlefield you've already burned. You see the machinery behind obedience, the invisible gears that grind people into polite submission, and you can't unsee it anymore. The world runs on unspoken contracts, on illusions of safety. You used to sign them without reading the fine print. Now you write your own terms, you move differently. You speak less, but when you do, it cuts through conversations like a coded signal. People sense something in you they can't name. It's not confidence, it's precision. Before, you needed their permission to act. Now, you study silence like an ancient language. You recognize what few ever learn. That power doesn't come from noise, it comes from control. The ability to hold your tongue when others spill secret. The patience to wait 3 moves ahead while they're still celebrating their first. The discipline to say nothing and watch as truth reveals itself without force. You've become fluent in restraint, and in that restraint, you've found your weapon. It feels almost divine, this new state, like standing inside a storm and realizing the thunder obeys you. You understand now that betrayal was necessary because it purified your intentions. The lies they told sharpened your vision. Every rejection was a redirection toward the version of you that doesn't beg to be understood. You start to see people as patterns, energy signatures, algorithms wearing skin. Some still carry light, most are echoes, but you no longer resent them. You study them. Every word, every hesitation, every glance, it's data now, and you use it quietly, efficiently. There's an ancient pulse beneath this awareness, something that feels older than your body, older than time itself. It hums behind your choices, as if reality itself is testing your precision. You notice how doors open before you knock, how faces soften before you speak. The universe recognizes power, not the kind that shouts, but the kind that vibrates. You've entered the realm where outcomes bend to observation, where thoughts manifest because you finally stop doubting you deserve to command them. You've become the ghost in their system, the shadow behind the curtain. You don't chase, you attract. You don't explain, you imply. You don't fight for attention, because attention now feels like a currency you own. You no longer move through the world moves around you. And for the first time, you understand what it means to be dangerous, not because you seek destruction, but because you've learned to wield stillness like a blade. You walk through the same city, but it no longer feels alive. The streets that once whispered doubt now fall silent when you pass. Neon lights flicker against glass, casting fractured reflections of the person you used to be. You can almost see them, the old you, standing beneath a streetlight, still waiting for permission to exist. But that version of you is gone. You buried them quietly, without ceremony, beneath the ruins of your own hesitation. What remains now is something colder, sharper, untraceable. The people haven't changed, but their eyes have. They don't meet yours for long. It's as if they can sense the gravity you carry now, the quiet authority of someone who no longer needs to explain themselves. You speak less, but every word you do speak lands like prophecy. You've learned that silence cuts deeper than arguments ever could. Once, you tried to be understood. Now, you understand too much. The same ones who mocked your defiance now imitate your restraint, trying to capture a piece of the darkness that made you whole. You've become the echo of their warning, the shadow they were afraid you'd turn into, and still you walk without remorse. There's power in restraint, knowing you could destroy, yet choosing not to. It's the discipline of the scared, the elegance of those who've burned and returned without ash. They think silence means surrender, but you've learned silence is camouflage, a weapon sharper than noise. You let them underestimate you because that's how you win now, by being unseen until it's too late. Every step feels premeditated, like you're walking through a world made of glass, and every word, every glance could shatter it. You feel the watchers still, those who once studied your disobedience, now studying your control. They don't understand that the game ended the moment you stopped playing by their rules. You've turned every boundary into a map, every scar into a code. And though they whisper that you've changed, they'll never know the truth. You didn't change. You returned to what you always were before they taught you fear. You carry yourself differently now. Shoulders relaxed, eyes steady, pulse unbothered. You know who you are, and that alone terrifies them. The ones who tried to silence you now speak your language without knowing it. You exist in the margins between right and necessary, between peace and power. You've learned to wait, to calculate, to become the storm only when the silence has done its work. They call you unpredictable, but that's because they still think in pattern. You erased yours, and when you stand before the mirror, it no longer mocks you. The reflection stares back with something divine and distant, an understanding beyond emotion, beyond pride. You see it now, the full circle. They said, "Don't do it," because they feared the person you'd become if you ever did. They were right to fear it. Because now, every rule they wrote trembles in your presence. Every no they uttered echoes back as thunder. You don't need revenge anymore. You became it.